Hi everybody. Today we are going to look at part 2 of the Code of Fair Testing Practices in Education, this time focusing on administering and scoring tests. Now, in our previous video, we discussed developing and selecting appropriate tests. And this one, as I said, will be administering and scoring tests. The third one will be reporting and interpreting test results. And the fourth will be on informing test takers. And all this comes to you from the Joint Committee on Testing Practices 2004. Still very relevant, still used today, and there will be a link at the end of this video so you can check it out. Now, regarding administering and scoring tests, test developers have the responsibility of explaining how to administer tests. And this is in order to ensure that it's done correctly and fairly. Test users, on the other hand, need to administer and score correctly and fairly. For test developers, they need to have clear descriptions of detailed procedures for administrating all tests that they create. And this includes giving them information on how to do it in a standardized manner. In other words, uniformity. You want to make sure that everybody is sitting at the same type of seat, same type of desk, same materials. They have to have all the same and are told the exact same thing in order to ensure that there is reliability and validity in the tests that they're taking. Now, test users, on the other hand, need to follow all of those procedures to make sure that everybody who takes this test, every test taker, has a fair chance to show what they can do. Test developers need to provide guidance on reasonable procedures for test takers who have special needs and who have diverse language backgrounds. In other words, if you're in the United States and English isn't your first language, they need to make accommodations when you're taking a test in order to show your actual skills, not the possible lack of ability of understanding what the questions are asking. Now, test users need to provide and document all the procedures that they do when they're giving a test to test users. This includes people that have disabilities and people with diverse language backgrounds. And this is important because they need to ensure that all the requirements are meeting the laws and regulations of the state, as well as the procedures outlined by the test developers. This, again, is to make sure that everybody gets a fair shot at the test that they're taking. Now, test developers also need to provide information to test users and test takers in regards to the formatting of the test, procedures for answering the test, and needed materials and equipment for taking the test. And this includes telling test takers to fill in the bevel, or make sure they have a number 2 pencil to fill in their check marks in the box, or that they have the appropriate answer sheet. Now, test users need to provide test takers with information like test formats and materials needed so that they can familiarize themselves a little bit with how the test works and how they'll be taking it. So hopefully this will reduce some of the level of stress that they have while taking the test. Test developers also need to establish security procedures, and this is to ensure that when they develop the test, that it's done accurately, that when people administer the test, that they do it in a way that's secure, and the scoring is secure. And also the reporting by the end of it, putting all the scores together, making sure that it's reported properly and accurately. This is to avoid any kind of tampering that may be involved that would change the scoring. Now, test users need to protect the test materials, respect the copyrights of the material. In other words, you don't want to give example questions of a test because it may compromise the test itself. And also make sure that all the procedures are followed to avoid any fraudulent scores. Test developers also need to provide all information needed to score and monitor for accuracy. This also includes giving plenty of information on the training that may be needed in order to score the tests properly. Test users need to provide those properly trained individuals who can score the tests accurately. And they also need to make sure to monitor the process of scoring, again, to avoid any fraudulence or to avoid any major mistakes. Test developers need to correct errors in the scoring process. And when they do that, if they detect an error, they need to communicate those corrections immediately. Test users, on the other hand, need to correct any errors that they might see when they're interpreting the scoring to make sure, again, that the scores are accurate and fair. And if they find any inaccuracies, then they need to correct them and to report them promptly. Test developers also need to develop and implement procedures to ensure confidentiality in scores. This is not true of all tests, but this seems to be pretty true of most educational tests, like standardized testing. They don't necessarily want everybody to know what the individual score is because they're looking for norms. They're looking for the all-over score of a school or of a state or even of the country. And test users are also developing and implementing procedures to ensure confidentiality of scores. In other words, they'll make sure that the information of the scores doesn't leak. Well, this is the end of part 2, and I hope this was informative for you, and I look forward to talking to you again in part 3.